Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So I am trying yet another location outside. We'll see how it goes. Um, it's got a little bit of a breeze, so not too terribly bad, and it's late in the evening, so not quite as hot as it was earlier, thank goodness. And I have to admit, I never take naps, but I took one today, and it was great and also awful because all that time I spent sleeping, I could have spent on housework and I need to get some groceries and so many different things I need to do. But yeah, I don't regret it. So I highly recommend that because sleep is so critical, and I know you know that, but this is just really a reminder, right? So I just really recommend it. Just every now and then, if you can just, a lot of times when I try to lay down, because I try to take naps more often, and I can't do it. And it's because I'm thinking about everything I need to do. And so it's like I can't relax. But today, for whatever reason, wasn't a problem. So, but anyway, I hope you're doing good, and I hope you enjoy the message. As always, it's very laid back and casual, and I hope that you just enjoy it. So, I was in this bookstore. It's been a couple of months back now, and they had a lot of really neat things, old books, and just some random home decor and all this cool stuff. Most of it used, right? Not all of it, but they had these art cards, and I've never been into personally trying to figure out like how to read like tarot cards or anything like that. My aunt actually sent those to me, a set of the I forget what they're called, like the Rider Waite. It's like the most well known probably set of tarot cards. She sent that to me when I was younger, and I kind of looked at them a little bit, but I didn't really get into it. But and I'll share my thoughts on that real quick, just a quick tangent if I can. And that is, I think that any kind of cards, any kind of even artwork, or even like stories, like what we're going through in this old Shakespeare book, all this kind of stuff is just, for me, a method of getting the wheels turning in my mind, just getting me inspired to think about things, really just for fun. It's not like I'm worshiping any of this stuff, and it's because, for me at least, I truly believe in what Jesus put forth in his teaching when he was performing all these miracles. And he told his disciples, he said, all these things that I'm doing, he's like, you can do these things and greater. And so I feel like, and two, there's a verse in the Bible that says, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you will have them, or that you'll receive them and you shall have them. And so, and I don't think this is all just magic thinking, and just hoping for stuff to fall in your lap. I definitely think that another verse, faith without action is dead, and so, or without works. We have to do our part, but we don't get the credit for it because it's like a relationship. It's like we do our part, and then the numinous comes into the picture too, just like in all these old myths and fairy tales. The numinous aspect comes into play and helps the main character along the journey. And that's going to be kind of at the heart of the message today, really, is about relationship. And so, but that's how I view these things. There's some kind of buzzing at a house around here. I hope it's not too distracting for you all. I'm not sure what that's about. But it sounds like, but it's, that's what these things are like for me, is what I'm trying to get at, right? And so just giving me pretty pictures to look at. I love art anyway. Y'all know I love art, and especially in all the different forms, even if it's just in, little card sets. And then a lot of these card sets will actually explain just snippets of how particular animals played a part in old myths and legends, and specifically belief systems among all kind of different cultures, around the world throughout history. So this is all really interesting stuff, and we can always learn from one another, whether in present day or people in the past, cultures in the past, ways of living both present and in the past. So all this stuff is just, for me, these are all tools for insight as well as inspiration and encouragement. And because I've worked really hard at trying to self-examine and root out any preconceived notions, stereotypical type of thinking, biases, things like that, I like now, it's fun for me now to examine a lot of different things from all different angles, because it gives me new revelations. And why does that matter? Because it can improve not just your own peace and sanity, it can validate you, for one thing, especially if you've been entangled with a person steeped in deception, a person who just lied to you and psychologically abused you for a long time, things like that. Especially if you're coming out of that kind of situation, all these different things are tools to kind of aid you on your journey of healing your mind, because they call it rewiring your brain. When you're trying to undo this conditioning and brainwashing, that's what it is. And you want to make sure this is a conscious process now, as opposed to an unconscious thing that happened to you. Now you're participating in the creation of whatever you want to call it, your new self, your new way of life, whatever it is, but you're making sure that you are, in fact, taking these thoughts into captivity. I can't remember the way this verse goes, we're taking these thoughts captive, into and unto the obedience of Christ. So we're filtering everything. We're now a conscious participant in the rewiring of our brain, because we want to bring more peace into our life and into the lives of those that we have relationships with. So it's all good. It's all good stuff. And that's why, I just ask you to reserve, to try to catch, first of all, and I had to do this myself, so please don't think I'm preaching at you, but I just invite you to try to notice any preconditioned judgments you may have that pop up anytime a particular term or label comes up, whether it's about a person, a label that society slaps on people, or whether it's a stigma associated with stuff or things like tarot cards. Do you see what I'm saying? It's up to each person whether they're going to put faith into a physical object being more authoritative than themselves and God, the creator God. It's up to each person to give authority in the place that they choose, or to the person or spirit or whatever or thing that they choose. We each get to choose where we place this authority. So now we're getting into concepts of we're supposed to have no other gods before the creator God. We're not supposed to have any idols, and things can become idols. We can look to stuff to tell us what Jesus was telling his disciples that we already have the authority to do. So I'm going totally just from my heart, really, and not my notes, but I hope it was beneficial, a good opening to the message for you all. So I will be sharing a card from this deck here, and when I bought this, they have these sealed, and you can't really see a lot of what you're getting. They had a couple of examples on the back, but this was not really so much for the art, even though I have to admit I do like line drawings. I really like just very basic illustrations, block printing, and pen and ink. Pen and ink is so much fun, but it's mostly explaining the symbolism and you can further research. These are just starting points to then dive in and do more research into other cultures and how they have looked to nature to as giving them signs, that are applicable to their own life. And then therefore they draw insights, and it just helps them along their journey, right? So this has been really interesting for that. But I did pull a card today, and I'll share that with you all here in a little bit. But I want to open by talking about how, and I don't really know what label you want to apply to this. And I kind of think of energy. Let me just open with that. I think of energy. Or essence, our very essence. I think that we can operate in this life with, and I think this is automatic. I don't think it's intentional or a conscious choice, especially to begin with, but I think that we start out very dense. And I know, like, when I was a kid, people would use the slang term, you're so dense, for people that were very, another word might be base, or just short-sighted. There's not a lot to them. They're not capable of introspection. They're very set in their ways, things like that. I think a lot of us start out that way in life because we don't know anything. And so when I talk on my channel a lot about expanding our mind and creating this spaciousness, what I'm talking about is breaking up that density, breaking up rigid thought structures that are imprisoning your potential for growth, your personal growth, and therefore the ability to truly connect, actually see. First, it starts with belief for a lot of us. It's kind of like, do you have to see to believe, or do you have to believe to see? That's a good question. But this relationship with something greater than us, to me, isn't even possible if you are operating from this dense energetic state, And so I recalled earlier when I was writing my notes on this how Jesus was talking about his yoke is light, to lay down your burdens because his yoke is light. And that's really what comes to my mind and heart when I think about density, like spiritual heaviness and the imprisonment of rigid expectations that are related to being very worldly. And I think that when we talk about being worldly, there are people who choose that. They may have had the opportunity. They may have reached a crossroads in their life or a certain place on their journey where they had the choice to go deeper in the spiritual realm and expand themselves in that way, and they may have chosen to remain very shallow and worldly and getting their kicks and fulfillment and pleasure through worldly means. But I think that a lot of us don't realize that we are operating in a worldly manner for a long time, and it's just because we're spiritually immature, And so this is not about shame, bringing shame to self or others, either one, but yeah, to me, this is all a lens you can apply to spiritual maturity, the journey of spiritual maturity, which is going from being dense to being light. Both light in how it feels in your spirit, in your heart, and in your mind, and also being filled with the light, So I love those double meanings sometimes with these words. But all right, so something came to mind related to in the Bible where it's talking about leavened bread and the instruction to refrain from eating leavened bread, and so and therefore to only eat unleavened bread. Okay, so to be leavened means to have an additive, or to bring an additive into something if it's leavened, and this ingredient causes it to rise. Okay, so there is a rising, there is a lightening of think about the density of dough, of bread dough. And then when it's baked, how it just also expands, and it's less dense. It's very fluffy and airy. And so, hang on, y'all, I can't read my writing. Okay, yeah, it says altered. So essentially, it's, you might use the phrase spiritual alchemy here. It's like a process. But just taking this idea of leavening, we're going to kind of go with that, okay? So, Jesus says in the Bible that he is the vine and we are the branches, okay? And then it also says in the Bible, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am, meaning God, like God speaking, there I am also. So that's always kind of been tucked away in my mind and heart, and I've kind of been marinating in it for years. There's like a surface level understanding of things, but then over time, if you are truly yearning to understand things on another level, those other levels will be revealed to you in time, I have found. And so, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am also. So now we're getting into this concept of relationship, okay? So let me sum up what I've shared so far by saying this. To be leavened, for us to be leavened by the Holy Spirit, okay? What happens, what you might think of as happening to us, is that we are transformed, okay, from one individual to many as one. So, what came to mind was this jellyfish that I found out about a few months ago, maybe a year now or so, but it's called a man-o-war jellyfish. And essentially, it's not a singular jellyfish. It's many different organisms that are their own individual separate organisms, but they're living together as one organism to create this jellyfish, this man-o-war. They call it a man-o-war jellyfish. Coolest thing ever, when I was researching the area of the beach I was going to, because I got stung. And so I was trying to make sure that going forward, I would know how to hopefully identify, what was around me and what to look out for. So, yes. So again, we have this concept now in the material as many acting as one, both simultaneously, a paradox, right? And so this concept of a hive mind came to me when I was thinking about all this. So let's take a look at this. One definition of leaven, this is one that I found, means an agency or influence that produces a gradual change. Okay, an agency or influence. And even those two words right there are just, layered with many different meanings, agency and influence, but still. So there's a gradual change. So if you think about it, we're subjected to so much influence on this journey. And it's not just what we take into our mind and dwell on and think about, and how that influences our beliefs and our paradigms and our approach to life and everything, the way we relate to others, everything. But even on the physical plane, we're taking in all these random ingredients. This was something I learned about in my most recent career path that I am now out of. And that was, if you have interest, I encourage you to look into MSDS sheets or SDS sheets, material safety and data sheets, right? And so these will detail out ingredients sometimes. A lot of times manufacturers, and they are covered by law to keep their recipes secret, and I get it. I get it. But at the same time, consumers, they deserve to know what they're ingesting into their body or putting on their skin, if it's soap or whatever it is. And so these are really interesting documents, just putting that out there. But even my daughter's teacher, let me share this too. my mind's all over the place. I'm like, what do I pick and choose to share in this moment? Because it's just flooded. But my daughter's teacher, she sent a note home and requested that the parents don't send snacks with their kids that contain red dye. And I had forgotten all about this because back in my teaching years, I remember that was when I was first made aware of the impact of some of these commercially produced dyes that we ingest. Like a lot of times they're in cereals and candies, and how it actually affects children on a behavioral level. Their mind and the way they think and the way they are energetically present in the moment, that affects the way they learn. Or if they're too distracted, or just their heart rate and their ability to focus and absorb material in the classroom. So it's just incredible the kind of things that we ingest, you know what I mean? And again, the things we put on our skin, everything. So I just encourage, on your growth journey, look into those things too, because they do matter, just a reminder. But so that's all of that even is influential. So yeah. We're talking about checking for purity, really, is what we're doing. And on all levels. And to me, I feel like when you get to a place in your life where you are motivated and disciplined enough, and you, well, I said motivated, you want to filter and check for things like purity and examine and choose carefully. When you reach that place on your walk, to me, that is a great sign of maturity, and just wanted to say that it's a mark of maturity, especially spiritual maturity, because you're reaching for higher things, So, and here's another thing. I was thinking about maturity. I was like, well, how does the world, quote unquote, society, you might say, define maturity? I would say, based on observation and experience, I would say the world defines maturity as a decline in creativity and imagination and an increase in knowledge, right? So, on the opposite side here, right, we have the total opposite, which is spirit defining maturity. How would spirit define maturity? I would say as a decline in worldly knowledge. It's the total reverse. And, well, let me just say this. A decline in worldly knowledge, because worldly knowledge leads to worldly ways in a worldly life, right? So there's a decrease in that when we're talking about spiritual maturity, but an increase in the spirit of creation. So the exact opposite of the way the world encourages us to live. And so the spirit of creation is good. And we know at this certain place on our journey that as part of creation, the creation process, there's a lot of falling away and a cutting off and a doing away with the things that are toxic, both physically and mentally and spiritually. All that's part of the process, the refinement process. So I was reading earlier 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and I just wanted to point that out, that I was reading through that and I was trying to pick and choose what parts to quote, and I was like, I just want to say this. It's a really, really great chapter if you want to take a look at it in the Bible. And there was a part here that it's explaining that we are instructed to be steadfast, unmovable, and always abounding in the work of the Lord. And it says that our labor is not in vain. Okay? So we're going to talk about what this means. But let me just shift and say this. When we're trying to figure out which way to go, when our world's been totally turned upside down, or we've gone through crazy times or whatever, right? And we're getting back to where we should be and want to be, okay? To look externally for direction. And there's so many ways we can do this, but to look externally for direction is to become vulnerable to the tree of knowledge, which we were forbidden in the Garden of Eden to eat from this tree, right? It was the tree of knowledge of what? Of good and evil. So we're talking about judgment. So when we're looking externally for guidance, it can wind up being a very subtle but substantive, is that a word? An important, like a really impactful trap. And the trap is that we find ourselves engaging in this false approach to life that's centered on judgment, okay? And it's hard, again, even to use language, because you just throw a word out there and you know what your intention is, but again, a lot of these words have multiple meanings. Like, for example, you want to use good judgment. I'm not saying don't use good judgment. Good judgment is good, but what I'm talking about is like the judgment of proclaiming something, bad, good or bad. And so it feels very contradictory, doesn't it? And yet it's I go back to what I've said many times, which just rings so true for me, which is the greater truths are, in fact, a paradox. They're a paradox, paradoxical in nature. And so that's very true here too. So the reason I referenced this tree of knowledge of good and evil and how, Adam and Eve were prohibited, they were instructed. They weren't prohibited. They were allowed that choice, but they were instructed not to eat of it, okay? And we also had this choice. The reason I brought that up is because going back to what Jesus says, where he says, I am the vine and you are the branches. Well, here's the thing. You have two options. Option one is to eat of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil and engage in this never-ending, never certain, very stressful game of judgment. Or instead of seeking direction and applying authority to this external tree, we could shift over here and we can become this tree, which is just many layered, right? When you're looking at the implications of this, you're no longer seeking externally for one thing, you're seeking in here, and yet you're not self-focused either, because spirit is not singular. Spirit is relationship. So it's just like the essence of the man of war jellyfish. You are both singular and not singular, a part of something greater. I've got a cat right here. There's the fuzzy tail. But yes. So I think that at least this is how it's been for me. I don't want to say we and generalize, but for me, and I wonder if you have felt this way too, when we're thinking really deeply on philosophical concepts and spiritual beliefs and just mulling over all kind of different ideas, when we get to a place where we're coming up on a conclusion such as don't look to this external tree for direction, but instead be the tree, it starts to feel very isolating, like you're just introspecting so much to such a degree that you're just reverting into this restrictive inner world where you're not engaging with the real world anymore or other people or anything. And that's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. So I wrote all this stuff conjures up ideas of being as existentially alone. It just feels like, ooh, this don't feel good. It seems good, but it doesn't feel good. Well, the thing is, like I was saying, there's this paradox. Once you reach this certain place of spiritual maturity, And that is that we are ultimately in a community. When you become the tree, it's not just you. You have Jesus at the center, and you have yourself and everyone else that is sharing that same spirit with you. So this spirit within you is not, it is you, but it's not just you. You see what I'm saying? You are tapping into a spiritual community. Okay. Again, like the Man O' War jelly. So you're going from a position of me, just me, right? Which is in the world, striving to be a part of an external worldly community, okay? You're going from that to we. And essentially, it's a position of yourself, of me, as something greater, as a we and us, this community, this expansiveness, okay? So the implications of this, I was just writing some notes here, the worldly approach to life, you have a mindset of lack because you're seeking things externally. You're striving to attain because, again, you have this belief that abundance is out here and you're separate from it. There's this separateness, this belief. And I think sometimes we don't label it. We're not conscious of it because we don't label it. And so we are operating this way and we don't even realize it. But we're just spinning our wheels, And then over here, once you get to this other place, a spiritual place, then it's more of a spirit of being fulfilled. There's no longer a mindset of lack. It's a mindset of abundance. And it's kind of like, when I say abundance, it's like you know that you already have. You already have. And you know that you already have because you're operating in what they call faith. Faith, again, without works is dead. So you have your part to do, but I'm reminded of the verse that says, when you pray, believe that you will receive and you shall have. And if you can start there, and it is gradual. It is a gradual rising and expansion process for us. But how does that look? It means taking one step at a time. It means being willing to walk through the darkness in these stories, right? These fairy tales. Through the dark woods, through the fog, through the rain, the mist, the whatever it is where you can't see more than 3 feet in front of you. And so life sometimes forces a lot of us into that position, and it winds up being helpful and a blessing in disguise, where God works all things for the good of those who love Him, because you have no other choice sometimes because of what's happened in your life but to put one foot in front of the other. And you don't know what's ahead, and it's very stressful at first because your whole life you may have been a planner and a goal setter, and you thought you could see way out into the future. If I do A, B, and C, then I'm going to get X, Y, Z or whatever. But when life shows you, no, those formulas don't work. Because guess what? You're not in charge. then, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general. Then it's it can be either stressful or a blessing. The blessing is, well, if you accept that you're no longer in charge and that the false belief that you ever were anyways is what created all this stress and pressure on you. When you can let that go and say, thank goodness, I'm no longer really in charge, then that is what the surrender is all about in the spiritual realm. And it brings you peace. But you do have a part, It's not like you're just laying down. That's it. You have a part, an important part. But, yes. So, I would also like to say that this Man O' War jellyfish existence in the spirit, you might say, you reach a place where it's not a belief, it's a knowing, and it's a knowing because it's an experience. getting to, this is the layering of understanding these Bible verses, right? I'm looking in the background because I heard something back there, y'all, in the woods. Hopefully it's nothing. But you can read this stuff and grasp it intellectually, but to pull it down deeper into a knowing, that requires experience. And so I just want to encourage you that it's not like I got it all figured out. I don't. I'm at a place where I admit that, and I'm good with it, and it brings me peace. But I'm getting to have moments, and it's slowly starting to become a continual moment for me, that all these things are an actual experience. And this is where you get into concepts like magic and synchronicities and things like that. And again, it's sad because these organized religions, a lot of people that are in them, you're going to find a lot of judgment. So even terms, words like magic, there's an immediate association to that label with negative energetic intentions like witchcraft and things like that. And I think a lot of us, and we don't have to even justify anything, because either you're aligned in spirit or you're not. Either you're going to understand one another in this way or you're not. And there's no sense in spinning your wheels and trying to make someone who's not sharing the same spirit with you understand, because they can't. That's what Jesus was talking about. It's like you're hidden with Christ in this way because there's people who are not sharing the same spirit as you, and they're not going to get what people who are sharing in the same spirit with you get. It's like you're walking in two parallel different worlds, and it's really interesting. But you get to a place, this is how I feel, where life itself is magical, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, and that's captured beautifully in a lot of art, and as well as moving pictures, movies. And I'm thinking about all these Disney movies even that are founded on these ancient fairy tales. Just great life lessons and spiritual undertones. Just so much fun. When you get to a place where life is magical, it becomes fun. It's fun to explore. Now it's an adventure. You know what I mean? So, yes. And so to me, this is what it means to be in the world but not of it, right? So, yeah, okay, so this Raven card, I pulled this card earlier. I shuffled my cards. I rarely sit down and do this, but I was like, let me just take a look, because it comes with this book. And, but I pulled this card, and it's the Raven. I thought, I bet there's a lot of history to this animal as being very symbolic. And it's true. So if you do some research online, and I just encourage you to do your own research if you want to, but there's all kind of different meanings, different symbolism tied to this animal. Some things I found were talking about how it's a symbol for the Creator. Again, because we're talking about magic here, making things happen. So there's authority associated with this animal symbolically, right? But it's also described as a cunning trickster. So again, now we have this all-encompassing paradoxical type character, right, that we're looking at. And if you wanted to look it up, there's a really cool AI overview of this Inuit story, and I'll see if I can share that with you all here in a little bit, but I might drop it in the description. But there's many different variants too of that story. And so, but let's take a look at the word raven. So in Latin, the word for raven is corvus, which also means a crow or a rook. And then furthermore, it's associated in Latin with grapnel, meaning a tool, an anchor, or a fish net. So I'm recalling, Jesus going fishing and being a fisher of men. And so if you look up grapnel in English, it's related to uncus. So this is a Latin word, okay? I don't know how to say it. uncus, and it means hooked, barbed, crooked, hook, clamp, or grappling iron. And I thought, well, that's really interesting because I'm thinking about fishing. But then if you break this down, you have the first part of the word, un, from una, I'm thinking like universe, right? Una, which means together with rather. And I'm thinking also like in the moment how, uni means one, right? But yet una in Latin is together with. Again, we have this essence of the Man o' War jelly. And I was thinking about unanimous, of one mind, right? And then the last part of the word, cus, because we're looking at uncus or uncus, as a prefix, cus as a prefix is related to things like parental authority, like custody, and the good aspects of that, like protection and safekeeping and defense and preservation. This is on the front end as a suffix, cus. But then on the back end, as a suffix and not a prefix, cus means warlike. And I thought, yeah, that's it rings true for me. Okay, so if you think about a loving parent who is going to have your safekeeping in the forefront of their mind, okay, on the front end, the offensive posturing is going to be peaceful, just like a jellyfish, right? It's going to be majestic and something to really respect, something that's beautiful. To want to protect your child is beautiful. And I would just encourage you too to think about, the Heavenly Father in relation to us, okay? So this is all, you see this potential, okay, and this positioning of authority. Just like jellyfish, like I was saying, they're beautiful at first, beautiful. But if you get entangled with them, they can sting you, right? They can be dangerous. And so I'm thinking about cus on the back end as a suffix meaning warlike. And I just want to remind you that, the Bible says that God will fight for us. And I think sometimes that we can proclaim we have faith in certain aspects of our life, but when it comes to things that are really worrisome to us, troublesome, we feel like suddenly we need to be in the driver's seat. And I just want to take this moment. I'm sharing my own self-talk with you, really, is what I'm doing. That just like how many of us found ourselves on this path of growth, spiritual journey, whatever, we found ourselves here not by our own choosing, but because we went through some stuff, and we couldn't even see more than one or two steps in front of us, anymore. It turned out to be a path that led to really great things. And that wasn't my doing. And for many of us, it wasn't our own doing. It was God's doing. So I just share that to encourage you, that God is, He's omni. He's all, right? And yet simultaneously described as there's nothing bad in Him. So again, we feel so compelled to interject ourselves in our own lives and sometimes in the lives of others and dance with or get entangled with this tree of knowledge of good and evil. But I just encourage you to remember, all these things and just see what God places on your heart, through this message I'm sharing with you all, right? So just a quick little, I forgot to share this with you all. In this book, it's talking about this card, the Raven, And I'm not going to read all of it, but it says, this is a time to witness the magic and wonders that life has to offer you on the etheric, I think I'm saying that right, thinking about like the ether, right? The etheric and physical planes. And it's talking about gathering with others, being a part of a group and learning from one another and sharing what we've learned with one another and walking the path together. And it's talking about this the spirit of evolution, right? So a really cool card. And I feel like, God, like I was talking about earlier, he's all. He's all. We don't have to step in and try to help him. You know what I mean? And so, again, this is not meant to be preachy. This is self-talk that I'm sharing with you all. Okay. So, yeah. Oh, so I was thinking earlier too, what if God in his omni essence is offering us in this human experience a multiplicity or an abundance of opportunities where we can choose, whether consciously or unconsciously, to apply the fruit of judgment and thereby proclaim ourselves as the authority. So many opportunities where we can do this. Or an alternative choice would be to see the good and the bad, the beautiful and the strange, and to observe our own reactions to all these things and situations of acceptance or delight or repulsion and so on. And willingly submit. Yeah. So if we choose this other option that I just shared with you all, where we're really in observation mode, okay, what happens is a spirit of surrender takes over because we are willingly submitting to this process of refinement, and I would also add that not only is this the spirit of surrender in action, and see, we have these associations with words like surrender, like giving up, or being weak, and it's not that to me. And so we could probably do a word study on that. but I think ultimately that if we choose this other option to not apply the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? But to just kind of see it all and observe, both everything out here and everything in here as we're going along. I think that it ultimately culminates in this recalling of our true purpose, which is what in the Bible it's described as being to worship. And so I was looking up worship, which is related to venerare or venerable, venerare being the Latin part, I think, venerable. And this is defined as worthy of respect. And this is from Venus, which is related to beauty, love, desire. And it's from Wen, W-E-N, meaning to desire or strive for. So we have this striving for love, okay? And a lot of times this requires self-examination and removing of obstacles and removing of negative influence and all this stuff, right? So that love can flow. I believe that love is a spirit that is one of, like a stream, like a river, and we have to make sure we can identify and remove these blockages to it. So what's required for love? I would say relationship, right? There has to be, again, two, right? Where two or three are gathered, there I am also. God is described as love in the Bible. So looking at the word relationship, it's from the Latin cognati, which means related by blood. But then if you break this down, you have com, meaning together, and natus, G-N-A-T-U-S, to be born. We're talking about We're talking about how relationship is required for love to exist. And we're looking at the word relationship and the Latin term for relationship. Breaking it down, it means to be born together. So, not only to be allied or related by blood, right? But it means to be connected or related by birth, okay? And we're talking about a different kind of birth here. The birthing of this expansiveness, right? Of this spirit because of the expansiveness, okay? Because of the leavening that has happened. Because of this crucial ingredient, right? Inside of us, the light. So, I would say that when we abstain from the things that hook us into these dense energies of the worldly realm, okay, then what we're doing by abstaining from these things is we're creating this spaciousness inside of us. We're becoming what we were intended to be, which is a vessel, okay? And as such, we are now born into or filled with this spirit, but this spirit is not a separate entity. We come to a realization that it's us and it's not us at the same time. It's the Man-O-War jelly spirit. That's one way I like to look at it. I like to look at symbols and stories because they just help me to retain this stuff on a deeper level. So I would just like to encourage you that if you're on this journey and you feel there's times when life does feel heavy, and that's just part of it, of being in the world. We don't have to be of it, but we are still in it. And so yeah, of course it's going to feel heavy at times, but I just want to encourage you that if you feel like you are a part of this greater divine, you are a spark, you have that spark inside of you from this greater, fire of the cosmos, God, the creator God. It's this whole experience is one of it being gradual, one of evolving. And so it does take time to locate our family, and so I just want to encourage you. So look at it this way. This is how I look at it. You don't have to, but for me, all of this that I've shared with you in this message has absolutely grown the spirit of patience inside of me. And that's what's needed. If you look at even how love is described, in the Bible, and that's very helpful too. But essentially, just look at this journey as, one that is gradual, it's ongoing, it's a one step in front of the other. You're getting comfortable walking through the forest, through the fog, whatever it is, the mist, not being able to see too far in front of you. It is the faith walk. It's the faith walk. But, it can be fun because ultimately, when you don't really know how everything's going to play out, well, that's what makes it an adventure, right? So I hope you enjoyed the message. I hope that it got the wheels turning. I hope it was inspiring and encouraging. And I just thank you so much for coming along to hear it. I hope that you have a beautiful day. And I'll see you again very soon. Oh, and let me share my very professional setup with you all. I'll drop a photo in here. So anyway, thanks so much again. Have a beautiful day. And I'll see you again very soon.